Hi, I'm Roxy Keller, and I'm baking my way through the Great British Baking Show challenges. Today, I am starting with what Netflix calls Collection 5, which is a season that aired in 2017. It was the first time that Judge Prue Leith was on the show, and one of the hosts, named Noel Fielding, was his first time on the show. And I'm starting with episode 1, which was Cake Week. So the challenge for Cake Week is to make what they call a fruity cake. Now, that's not just a fruit cake, it is a cake that only allowed fresh fruits, no dried fruits. And the challenge, I think, is to know how to balance the liquids in the recipe to make sure you have a good textured cake and not too much liquid. So my fruity cake today will be what's called a Hawaiian wedding cake. And this is not necessarily a cake that Hawaiians have at their wedding, but it is a cake that contains coconut and pineapple and walnuts, and therefore it's thought of as having Hawaiian flavors. So I'm going to start that now. And the cake will have toasted coconut on the outside after it's frosted. So the first thing I'm going to do is toast some shredded sweetened coconut. And also it contains walnuts, which the recipe will say that it needs to contain crushed or finely chopped walnuts. I like to start with whole walnuts and to toast them to give them an extra nutty flavor when they're in your cake. So I'm going to toast these as well. To toast the coconut, I am taking a heaping 1 cup of shredded sweetened coconut and putting it on a cookie sheet. Spread that out. You don't need any parchment paper or to spray your cookie sheet or baking sheet. And I'll do the same thing with the walnuts. Have a slightly smaller cookie sheet for walnuts. And we can put both of these in the oven at the same time, though they might not take exactly the same amount of time to toast. I'll let you know we're going to start with 5 minutes and we'll check and see how they're doing. Now, I've already preheated my oven to 350 degrees, and I have an internal oven thermometer that I use to verify the temperature that's shown on the outside of my oven. So I'm going to put these in the oven and set the timer for 5 minutes. Okay, so while those are toasting, we will start putting the cake mix together. And with most cakes and cookies, you want to blend the wet ingredients together first and blend your dry ingredients together separately. Once those are both done, then we will put those two together and mix them just until all of the dry ingredients become wet. We don't want to overmix because that will add gluten to your cake mix and it will make a tougher cake. So I am using a stand mixer. So I'm going to put the ingredients into the bowl of a stand mixer. And we're going to mix using the paddle blender. For the wet ingredients, this recipe starts with 115 grams of coconut oil. And some coconut oils come already liquid, some come as solids. So if you buy the solid type, I recommend melting that. I have it mostly melted. It will blend better in your bowl. And with the coconut oil, we'll add 130 grams of granulated white sugar, which is approximately 1 1/8 cups. The best way to meet the needs of your recipe will be to weigh out those ingredients because measuring in cups can be inconsistent. Next, we'll add 100 grams of dark brown sugar, and we'll add those to the coconut oil. I'm going to let that mix until well blended. I'll scrape down the sides once because these paddles never completely reach the bottom of your mixer. Next, we'll add 2 eggs. Again, we want this at room temperature because the molecules tend to mix better when everything is at approximately the same temperature. Now, if you had forgotten to take your eggs out and you're ready to make your recipe, it's a simple solution. Just put your eggs in a bowl of warm water, give it 4 or 5 minutes, and they'll be close enough to room temperature. We always crack our eggs into a bowl before we put them in the mix with the rest of the ingredients, because it's very easy to accidentally get eggshells in when we're cracking. 2 eggs. The timer on the oven just went off, so it's been 5 minutes. So we're going to check our coconut and walnuts. I want to stir the coconut flakes to get them a little more evenly browned. So I'll use 2 spatulas. Seems to be a good way to get that mixed. And we'll give that just a couple minutes more in the oven. Okay, after about 2.5 more minutes, this is how the coconut looks, and it's quite toasty with a few bits that aren't. It's a great mix of toasty. So we'll let that cool. And the walnuts, after another couple of minutes, I can smell the nuttiness, so I'm convinced that they are toasty. So I'm gonna put these on a paper plate and put them in the freezer so that they can cool down, because we're going to need them in a minute. Okay, continuing our wet ingredients, we're going to add, this is a 20-ounce can of crushed pineapple. And we don't want all of the juice from that pineapple, so we're going to put it through a sieve and press that down to get a bit of that juice out. Yeah. So here is my fresh or canned pineapple that I had. In the can that we worked through, there's about 3/4 cup of juice, and we only want about a 1/4 cup. We'll add a 1/4 cup of the canned pineapple juice to our cake and blend. Our last wet ingredient is vanilla. We'll add 1 teaspoon. And if you overflow a little bit, that's just fine. Too much vanilla is not too much. Okay, that's all for our wet ingredients. And now it's time to put together our dry ingredients. And I always weigh flour out on a scale because it's very inconsistent doing that with a measuring cup. And these scales are very inexpensive. So we need 260 grams of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and we don't want to get baking soda mixed up with baking powder because baking soda mixes with the acid in the pineapple juice to give off CO2 and add rise to your cake, add fluffiness to your cake. 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon cinnamon, 1/8 of a teaspoon of nutmeg, 3/4 cup flaked coconut. Now I've pressed that into the 1/2 cup and 1/4 cup measuring cups. And now we need our walnuts. The walnuts have cooled down enough that we can chop them. So we have 130 grams of whole walnuts that I'm going to finely chop in this small food processor. Okay, add that to the dry ingredients. We'll whisk together the dry ingredients to make sure things like baking soda and salt are well mixed. And the last ingredient to add is fresh pineapple. I have fresh pineapple that I will cut. I'm going to cut off the top. And there are several ways to get at the meat of the pineapple and get rid of the skin and the core. So I have this nifty tool that will allow me to do that simply by after going all the way through the pineapple, we should be able to pull out the core. Okay, now we can chop up that pineapple for our dry ingredients. Okay, so we have the core of the pineapple in the tube of this instrument, and I can simply pull away the fresh pineapple. And we need 1.5 cups. I want fairly large chunks so that we can bite into that pineapple when we eat the cake. That's 1.5 cups. I'm adding that to the dry ingredients because I want the pineapple to mix with the flour, and as the flour sticks to the pineapple, it will distribute the pineapple throughout the mixture. Okay, we're ready to add the dry ingredients with the wet ingredients. And we'll do that just a little bit at a time, but that will happen fairly quickly because we don't want to mix flour too much. Last bit of our dry ingredients. So scrape that one more time. Okay, the ingredients are mixed and we're ready to put those in the pan. I'm using a 9-inch springform pan with a 9-inch silicone insert. And you can find these, either you can buy them online from King Arthur Baking Company, or some hobby stores have them. We have a great hobby store in Omaha called Mango Seeds that has these and has parchment paper versions of these rounds. So we're going to put that in the bottom, put a little bit of spray around the edge, baking spray, add the baking spray, clean off the paddle. Don't want to lose any of that delicious pineapple. Now we're ready to put that in the oven. This will take approximately 45 minutes to bake, but I will check it at 35, 40 minutes just to make sure. Sticking a toothpick in to see if it comes out dry. I know it's done. If it's wet, put it in for a few more minutes. While the cake is cooking, I have cleaned up a bit and I'm going to start making the frosting. The frosting begins with 1.5 cups of of heavy whipping cream, and we will put that into the bowl of the stand mixer. We'll use the whisk attachment, and we'll set this to blend on high for several minutes until it becomes whipped cream. Okay, our whipped cream is whipped cream. Our cream has become whipped, so it has the texture of whipped cream. Now we'll add the other ingredients. The cream cheese at room temperature. That's 8 ounces of cream cheese at room temperature. We need 200 grams of powdered sugar that's been sifted. So we will add the powdered sugar with cream cheese and powdered sugar mixed. Added, we will mix that. Finally, we will add just a hint of salt, 1/8 teaspoon. 1 teaspoon of vanilla, generous teaspoon, and mix until well blended. Again, we do want to scrape the sides down and the bottom. And we'll put that in the refrigerator until the cake is very cool and ready to be frosted. So in actuality, this has taken about 58 minutes to bake. So if I were on the baking show, I probably would run out of time because this needs to cool completely before we add the frosting. So if you are trying to do this in a 2-hour period, say you have a dinner party to go to and you wanted to take this, I would split this into 2 9-inch pans. They'll cook faster, they'll cool faster, and then you can just make a layer cake. So once this is cooled, we will frost it. So it's been about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and in order to get this to cool a bit faster, I'm going to take the cake out of the springboard pan. And now I can place this in the freezer so that it will cool down much more quickly. Okay, so the cake has cooled and I'm ready to frost it. You can see it's a little bit dark. That's partially because of the dark brown sugar that we used, but also maybe could have taken it out of the oven a minute sooner, but we'll see where we taste it. Now the frosting is quite soft. This is just this type of frosting. It's a whipped cream frosting. If you want a stiffer frosting, you can always add more powdered sugar, but this is a very delicious light frosting. One nice thing about this cake frosting is that we don't have to make it perfect since we're going to cover it with coconut. So in order to do that, I'm going to place it back on my stand and put our coconut frosting. I have this great lifter that I can use to lift the cake off of this turntable. Now to add the coconut. You can add as much or as little as you like, depending on how much you like. Now to move your cake to the serving dish. We'll clean up the plate with a wet paper towel. And it's ready for judging or tasting. That is remove chunks of pineapple, toasted coconut, and walnut. It's delicious.